Have you or anyone you know ever been hurt during the course of a relationship? Has that experience morphed into the mindset of creating deal breakers prior to engaging in future interactions? What if I told you that those deal breakers were the manifestation of fear and sadly the result of the absence of forgiveness in your previous encounters? Today, we aim to finish our discussion on the power of forgiveness in relationships. So, if you haven't seen part one, I invite you to take a look at some of the cogent points made during that discussion. That said, get ready for an electrifying journey into the depths of the human heart with the power of relationships, part two. But I'm sorry, the power of forgiveness, part two. In this highly anticipated sequel, we dive deeper into the transformative force that is forgiveness. Building upon the profound revelations of the first installment, we unlock new insights, untold stories, and life changing revelations that will leave you spellbound. Join us as we explore the uncharted territories of forgiveness, delving deeper into the complexities of human relationships, the intricacies of cultural influences, and the unwavering strength of personal beliefs. Prepare to be moved, inspired, and challenged as we uncover the incredible resilience of the human spirit and the boundless capacity of healing through forgiveness. This is not just a video, it's a movement, a call to action, and a beacon of hope for a world in need of healing and reconciliation. Don't miss out on this riveting journey towards redemption and renewal. Share this video, like this video, and spread the word because the power of forgiveness knows no bounds, and together we can ignite a revolution of love and compassion that will echo throughout eternity. So, ladies, I kind of want to start off, in a particular way, if you don't mind. And first and foremost, what I would like to do is just kind of bring out the first question. In an attempt to pull from our previous discussions, at least I understand that you weren't a part of that, but I know that you watched them. So, in an attempt to pull from our previous discussion, what was one thing you want to bring forward that was discussed to jumpstart this conversation? Whoever wants to begin is fine.
I don't recall. I mean, it's been about a month, so I don't recall all of the content of the conversation that I think I can pull from it. Um, but I can add that without forgiveness, it's impossible for us to move forward in any relationship that we have. I will say that, and I'm going to allow Queenie to jump in.
Thank you. I think for me, first of all, hello everybody. But I think for me, it's the purpose of forgiveness, right? What are we doing it for? And I think we hit on that a lot the last time that we spoke. Um, what's the purpose? Who is it really for? What is it for? So, um, and I'm sure that those that listened the last time probably recall kind of how we got into that, right? How we really just delved into the real the person that really is the most freed from this from the act of forgiveness is the person that's providing the forgiveness, right? Who is saying, I forgive you, right? And that's so freeing for the individual. And so I think we can dive right into that because it's about the purpose of it.
Yeah, I agree with both points, of course. I think the one thing that I want to bring forward is like what really forgiveness really is, right? I think a lot of times we are conditioned to just say the word "I'm sorry," and that's supposed to be a band aid to go over the wound, and then we can move forward from that. But as you guys already know, that's not remotely close to getting after the true nature of what forgiveness really is. And then a lot of times it becomes conditional in nature and it means absolutely nothing. It becomes disingenuous. So for me, just understanding the concept, the idea, the trueness behind forgiveness and what it, like you said, what it really means. Like, what's the, why are we forgiven? Like, is it because my feelings are hurt, or is it because of who I represent, or is it because of the agreement that we made in the beginning, or is it all of the above? Um, so it's just getting after the true nature of forgiveness, what it is, what's the purpose of forgiveness, and then how does that look in the space of interaction and relationships. So As we're getting ready to start, I want to invite everybody who is watching us again. If this is your first time, by all means, not only follow us on YouTube, but you can also find us on the totalmindsetshift.com website, where we have our own personal interaction chat group, right? We have our interaction chat group for everybody so that we can continue these conversations. And speaking of conversations, what I want everybody who is out there in the vast ocean of digital space, I want everybody to understand that we are subject matter experts of our own perspective. That has been my phrase because I believe it to be true. And once we adopt that mindset, then we can make space for another person's opinion minus the judgment, hopefully, right? And so that's our projected idea to you. We are subject matter experts of our own perspective. We're not saying that what we're saying is easy. We're surely not even saying that what we're saying is your belief system, but what we're saying we wholly believe. So that being said, let's kind of jump after the first topic, which is communication in and rebuilding trust. So the question that I have, ladies, is what are some practical communication strategies for rebuilding trust after a breach in a relationship, and how does forgiveness play a role in that process? We're just gonna rip the band-aid off.
Okay, so practical strategies to rebuild trust after breaching a relationship. I think the first thing that after relationship is breached, there's a few things that has to happen. The individual that has breached the relationship, they should they must apologize, first of all, and be sincere in their apology. I think that's the first thing that has to happen. Now we know that forgiveness comes from God, and we know that we have our partners are going to have to find it within themselves to forgive, and that process is not just overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a period of time, and it happens when two people are committed to saying, okay, this happened, but I value our relationship, and there's going to be some boundaries set after that. And so we have to come into the place where we are both communicating with each other. We both have an expectation, and we're both going to work toward building a stronger relationship. And that foundation of that is communication. I mean, communication has a huge part in every aspect of our life. And I believe that is the some of the first steps in the roles and the processes of forgiveness.
Hmm. Um, Now I have to play advocate on this, Queenie, before I turn you loose because I see you ready. I got to play advocate because you said a lot, but let's just say I'm 20 years old and all of that you said sounds good, but I'm hurt right up in here. Like what do I need to do? Like how do I do that? How do I do what you just told me to do?
At 20 years old.
Well, we ain't talking about 20-year-old Dwayne. Somebody at the age of 20 with better common sense than I had when I was 12. Let's go there.
So how do you internalize the hurt? How do you is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's because for a 20-year-old man, young
Mhm,
man who is still trying to figure out life, right? Who probably came from a place that did not like we didn't have forgiveness as a staple in my family. So how do
mhm.
I internalize that to such a degree that I can move forward and probably reconcile a relationship, which we haven't even gotten into yet. So how do I do that?
I think the first for someone who is younger and maybe not have as much experience, I think it's so important for them to go speak to someone who has had the experience, someone they trust, and someone who can talk and they can sit down and talk to, and they can guide them in, because sometimes we need that. We have, you always talk about blind spots, coach, and we have blind spots, and then someone who is younger at the age of 20, I'm saying below 40, sometimes, I mean all the time, we need someone to help us navigate any situation when it comes to our quote unquote emotions or feelings. We need someone to help us navigate through that, because sometimes we don't have the wherewithal to understand it, and there's so much to unpack. And when you're 20 years old and you're experiencing hurt for the first time, because you really don't have, well, I'm not going to say you don't have, but you may not have had someone to speak to you and talk to you about the decision making, the decisions you make, that you have to be accountable for those decisions, because they may have caused some of these hurts that you're experiencing. And you just need to go talk to someone who can guide you through your process, someone you trust, someone who's reliable, not someone sometimes your same age, but someone who's more mature.
Yeah, I got it. And I appreciate that. And I know I packaged the question as 20-year-old, right? But it has no age. I'm just
Yeah.
being transparent. It doesn't have an age, doesn't have an age. It doesn't have a socioeconomic status. It doesn't have any of those things, because what we got to understand is that the only thing that gets you to the place of learning how to do it is experience. And unfortunately, we can have all the conversation that you want, but until I am hurt and faced with the thing, then that's when that person that has a better understanding of it, the maturity that I need, so forth and so on, can kind of help me to get through it and help me to bridge the gap. Queen of Love, I know we talked a lot already, and I hope we didn't steal your thunder.
No, of course not. Y'all said some great things. And I agree. I agree. I do want to address that 20-year-old, right? Um, because I giggled thinking about that. They haven't lived long enough. Some of them, right? They don't know. Um, but I think with a 20-year-old, we're just using them for an example. This is a time to teach them the lesson of you're going to one day have to be forgiven as well. What is that going to look like for you, right? So Thomas Fuller said it. He said that like he that cannot forgive others breaks the bridge over which he may pass himself. And so when you begin to teach that younger person, or that person that may not have this experience, or sometimes a person that's a little bit self-righteous, thinking that they've been the victim and they themselves have never victimized. um, One day this is a bridge we're all going to have to cross. Um, we are going to offend, and if we care in the right state of mind, we're going to also need be forgiven. And how do you want one to approach that when it's on the other hand? It's on the other shoe, or shoe is on the other foot. So I think in a situation like that, I think it's a perfect time to learn and to teach, that we're all going to have to come this way one day. And the other thing is, just going back to your question, and we're speaking about communication. I think and if we're talking about relationships, intimate relationships, because that's where I am. Um, I think that to me, it's only fair to understand what each person needs. Um, so because and I was just faced with this conversation the other day. A gentleman said, he's been having an extramarital affair, and his wife is finding out about this, and he said to me, well, do she need to know everything? And I said, if that's what she needs for her closure, are you willing to provide that? He says, well, for me, I just, I'm guilty and I did it, and I just don't feel like I need to tell her everything. Well, to me, I said, well, do you want to reconcile? Because if you want to reconcile, you need to not give her what you want to give her, but you need to be willing and vulnerable enough to give her what she needs. Because one thing I know about forgiveness, sometimes it's difficult to forgive the things that people will not own. And so while you're trying your best to forgive that, and sometimes we verbally say that, we are left, unfortunately, with resentment. So we have to be very careful when we're dealing with forgiveness in these relationships. And you have to know what people need. And if it matters, then provide that. And if it doesn't matter, then just say that. And we can move on and do something different.
Hmm,
Those are my 2 cents.
hmm.
Well, Coach, if I can add Ephesians, I'm sorry, I was going to add scripture.
Come on with the scripture. We welcome the scripture.
4:25. Wherefore, putting away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. And so that goes to what Queenie was saying as well. The truth. the truth is it should affect us first. So the work has to be done in us first until, and then we can, as to her statement she was making for the scenario that she was sharing, that individual has to do the work on them first, because if you don't, then there's going to be a repeat of the same habits. And so if we don't take responsibility, if we don't do the work and we don't examine ourselves, we're going to continue to have the same situation come up time and time again.
Yeah, I agree. I am always welcoming of the scripture. I'm going to offer a different perspective. Not just because that's what I do, but that's what I do. I'm gonna offer a different perspective, um, because I think a lot. And before I do so, I am not speaking directly to the scenario that you presented. I want to make sure I'm clear when I say that, because I don't want that person to think that I am giving them advice on their situation. I am not doing that. However, I am very careful when I hear the word need, because the word need pulls away from something else. Because if you position it as a need from me, then you are rejecting the need from which it is supposed to come. I always look at it, what is the relationship requiring? What does the relationship require of me? Because the relationship is the most important person in the relationship, not me, not you. And if I position myself as the most important person, or you position yourself as the most important person, then all I have to do is start telling you what I want or what I need for you to do. Then you're going to do it because that's what you know, or that's what society has taught you, or whatever that looks like. And that's one of the concerns that you see all across social media today. But what does the relationship require of me at this given point in time? That's the best question that anybody can ever ask themselves. Because if the relationship requires this, then that is what I do. However, if you require this, then I'm giving the relationship what it needs, but your needs should never overpower what the relationship needs, right? There's a relationship that exists prior to us becoming part of the relationship. That's why I brought this up during our last conversation. Forgiveness is part of me understanding who I'm committed to first. Therefore, in the space of, transgression, or, whatever, any other shun we can come up with, transgression, progression, transgression, oppression, whatever, right? In the space of that, then I recognize that because of who I'm in relationship with, then I present that to that person. Therefore, I go into the space of automatically forgiving them, or go into the space of making them aware of said offense. However, when I take that relationship and put on the shelf and say, I need this for closure, okay, I can't be that person for any other person, because that does not take into account the things that they've been through that they may have never come to grips with or actually reconciled with. So if I, like, say, for example, if I was raised in an environment to where I was never given the opportunity to express myself, and then transform, and then now moving forward, I am in the space of relationship. I've never expressed myself back here, and now I'm in a relationship to where you're requiring me to express myself. The relationship is telling me that I need to express myself, not in a way to where it is manipulative, but in a way that is healthy for everybody involved in a relationship. Well, that's something for me to work out. I can't hold you responsible for making or helping me to work that out. You can have conversations with me. You can help me to process these things, but that's my journey. And what I can never do is rob a person of their journey. However, if it is something that I caused, now that's a different conversation, because now that requires us to have conversation, right? To, get to the bottom line, whatever that looks like. Does that require the details of the transgression that took place? There are some people who say yes, there are some people who say no. I say, as thou believe, let it be unto you, right? So I'm just being honest. So that's for every person to figure out. In the space of those practical steps, you need to have conversation, right? You need to lay the cards on the table, just like we said the last time. If I am still working on this emotional thing that I got going on with me, I need to be transparent and lay the cards on the table up front. Therefore, when you offend me, you knew what you was getting into, right? So now what you can't do is say, hey, I didn't know. Well, yeah, you did because I told you up front. So now we got to cross this bridge because it's here. Same thing applies. If I am the person who transgressed against you, it's time for me to lay the cards on the table. But we also go back and like Lisa, that's me. I go to the scripture, right? The scripture says, "If thy brother trespass against you, rebuke him." That's a commandment, right? If they repent. So now that's a whole nother conversation that needs to take place. Okay, a whole nother conversation that needs to take place. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, right? I'm saying I believe you should. But if they do not, what do you do? You see what I'm saying? How do I get past that? Do I get past that? Is this cutoff criteria at this point? What is the relationship requiring of me? Like we talked about previously, is this relationship at this point when you choose not to repent, is it reconcilable? Right? What if they take their time in repenting? What if it's drawn out to where they say, hey, you know what? I ain't dealing with this right now. And then they go to the gym or go hang out with their homegirls or homeboy or whatever, and then come back 7 hours later. Now they want to have the conversation. You didn't had 7 hours to stew in your emotions. You see what I'm saying? So this is not just a black and white conversation. There's several layers to this conversation. And when we start talking about the practical steps in communication, like what does that look like? For me, if I offended you, there is no need for me to take my time to recognize what it is that you're telling me. That's what effective communication is. Effective communication requires me to pay attention to such a degree that I'm responding and I am understanding exactly what you're saying. In the midst of actively communicating, I should have a clear understanding of what you're saying and respond to that in present time. I believe wholeheartedly for a person who cannot respond in present time, that reveals to them information about them. I know we like to say it takes me time to process. It doesn't. I'm just being honest. What you're processing more so, I believe, is how you feel about what I'm saying, as opposed to processing exactly what I'm saying. And so what we do is we take our time and then we get to the point of eventually allowing time to exist in between what was actually stated and what I am going to say eventually. Well, we don't necessarily realize what is happening in those spaces. A lot can transpire within it. A lot can happen in this person's mind. That person can come to the point that, oh, okay, I just told you that I'm offended, and now you're withdrawing. Now you're choosing not to say nothing. Like, when did that become an option? So I think a lot has to be addressed in the space of practical communication when it comes to forgiveness. I'm gonna pause here because I know I said a lot, right? I want to kind of open the floor and allow you guys to respond to anything that I said, or if there's anything to respond to.
Well, Dwayne, I speak to the heart of the matter, and I get it. I know that you sometimes you tend to separate church and state. Um, and I speak to the heart of the matter, right? And I heard you when you mentioned the you and I, and then the relationship. I don't separate the two. Um, and I don't think that's it. That's exactly what you're doing. But I'm just saying that when I am dealing with people, the whole person in the relationship, one, I honor emotions. I honor feelings. Those things are real. So I will not dishonor them. They are real. And not everyone has a relationship with God. So there's not always a God in between my relationship and my reality. That's not Everyone doesn't serve the same. Um, and I'm inclusive in those that I speak with. And so I try to be inclusive in what I'm delivering, because I do understand that the whole person has emotions and feelings as well, regardless of how they show up and how they show them. And just respecting that everyone's needs are different. We're not robots. And if we train ourselves to be robots, sometimes we can seem and appear very out of touch when it comes to the needs of others. And when I say the word need, I hold myself accountable. I understand that what I do impacts the people that are connected to me. no matter what. I can so if someone comes to me and tell me that I have offended them, I understand that what I have done may have offended them, or in their words, did offend them. And if what they're asking for is clarity, I decide how much I want to give, sure, but I am empathetic to their needs. I am considerate of their needs. And I think that whenever we're talking about forgiveness in relationships, there's a cold forgiveness when you just say, I'm sorry, and that's all I got to say. That's worthless for some people. And so I think, again, I go back to saying what I said from the beginning: know your person, know what they need, and you decide if you can give that. Some people shouldn't even be in relationships. And to your point, and I won't make this long, to your point, like the individual that's really not ready. They come out of one environment, then they try to get into another. But again, maybe that person shouldn't be in a relationship, because relationships require something of you. It requires a sacrifice of you. And if you cannot and you will not, and you have not learned to be selfless in a relationship, then maybe relationship is not for you. And that's all I'm going to say.
I was listening to what Coach was saying, and I there's a question I wanted to ask him about the statement that he was making pertaining to in the moment when there's that difficult conversation arises, and you said that maybe the person shouldn't leave and go. You use the example of 7 hours. Do you think that it's important for that person to address the situation immediately, or to take time and consider everything
When am I feeling what I'm feeling?
now, immediately?
Precisely. And
Right.
that's why I say what I say.
Okay.
Because when I take the time to wait, what I'm saying is that how you feel in the moment doesn't matter. See,
Okay.
this is where what me and Queen is saying is lining up. It's not
Mhm.
that I'm saying that what she is saying is wrong. What I'm
Yeah.
saying is that we have to process it in a different manner. Because if
Okay.
we process it in the wrong manner, then what ends up happening is that one person's feelings become more valuable than the other person. If I tell you that I'm offended, I'm expecting a response right now. You
Mhm.
choosing to wait till later, you're telling me that, hey, how you feel isn't important right now. Let me go think about this right here. I'll get back to you when I get back to you. So what you're telling me right now is that you're more important to me. That's what I'm hearing. And that's why I answer your question with a question. If I am
Okay.
feeling what I'm feeling right now, and I mustered up the courage, because you got to realize it takes a lot of courage to confront the person that you care about. I
Mhm.
mustered up the courage to tell you about it, right? I'm hoping that you value me enough to respond here and now. So that's why I say what I say. Queen, I agree with you 100%. Everybody don't serve, right?
The-
God, I'm good with that. I really am, because I'm not forcing you to serve God. But until we understand that relationship is a manner of authority, right? That's really what relationship is. That's why I stated what's the relationship requiring of me, because there is a thing that to where I have to regulate this. This is my responsibility, not yours. When I make it your responsibility, now what I'm having you to do is serve me. And if I set the conditions to where you serve me, meaning my emotions are going to show up, even if I never reconciled with them prior to getting into a relationship. And you're absolutely right. There are a lot, and you say some people, I say a lot of people. A lot of people should be in a relationship because they never matured to the space that relationship require, right? And so now I am immature in relationship, and I want you to be, and I hate to say this term, but I want you to be the guy that I want that I need right now. And it's very dangerous, because you will spend the rest of your life doing cheetah flips trying to appease this person and their unreconciled emotions. It's a very dangerous game. And so that's why I say what I say. Um, and again, I'm with you, the total person. I talk about ecosystems of people all the time, right? It's not just your mom and dad I'm in a relationship now. Especially in the black community. It's your mama, your daddy, your auntie, your uncle, your best cousin. All them folk, all kinfolk, right? Because you know what that that's how it works. If we skin folk, we kinfolk. So I'm in relationship with all these people and their influences on their life. Oh yeah, let's not leave out the girlfriends, right? And then the dudes face the homeboys, right? Because let's be honest, some of them like me, some of them don't. And the one that's probably gonna chirp too much in your ear at this particular point in time, I told you he wasn't there. I told you he wasn't there. Bruh, I was trying to tell you the whole time, man. I was checking out the way she moved. I ain't like it. I ain't like it. So a lot of that matters. And what it does, it exacerbates the feeling of what the person is experiencing right here and now. That's why I say we can't just stay holistically in the space of feelings. Feelings must be like feelings matter. I agree. They matter, but we need to understand how and why and not just give them total reign because when they have reign, everything is at disarray. And so that's just my response. Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just to Queenie's point and to yours. When you say you have to know your person, I'm just agreeing with their statement because you do have to know your person. If you guys cannot walk together unless you agree. And the boundaries where you talked about, you being in a relationship with everybody, the mama, the daddy, the great grandma, everybody, those boundaries had to be set up front because the relationship is the two of you. And of course, you have family, but they can't make decisions for your relationship. So, just wanted to add that.
Nope, I greatly appreciate that. Miss Queen in Love, do you have anything else, man, before we move forward?
Not well, yeah, I do actually. I want to just address if can I address a comment in
Sure,
the
absolutely.
okay. So I see that Ben shared that, but I'm not moved by your feelings when I don't see my wrong. So me saying words are for show, not for correction. Um, I understand that, but I will say this. And this is again, this is me speaking from a space of empathy, right? I'm very empathetic. So when I hear I'm not moved by your feelings, but for me, when I'm again trying to reconcile with you, I lead with empathy and all the work, that's the workspace I'm in. So naturally that's what I do. So I lead with empathy, not being moved by my feelings is one thing, but honoring my feelings, giving space for my feelings and just being empathetic to the person that's in front of you that is hurting and is saying that you are the person that hurt them. That is the only thing that I'm suggesting that we address, right? Because again, if a person says that you hurt them and your response is cold or unattached, it can feel unauthentic. The interaction from that moment on can feel unauthentic. If that doesn't matter to you, then that's okay. That's what I'm saying. This is not like everyone should do this. No, if it doesn't matter, that's fine. You have a different way of looking at it, that's fine too. But I go back to knowing your person because if you're with a person that has a high sensitivity, to you and whatever's going on in their life, then they're going to need you to be moved by their feeling. I'm not saying be manipulated, not even saying being controlled, but I am saying being in tune. I am saying at least given space. Times are changing. This ain't the 20s anymore. Times are changing. People want to know that they're like you're relatable or that you're being heard or that they matter and they want to know that they matter, whether you choose to tell them or show them or not. That still is what a lot of people are desiring. That's the reason why they're in relationships.
Yeah, and he's addressing. He has another point in
Hmm.
what he's saying. Um, if you're trying to reconcile, then you're already en route to correction. I must see where I'm wrong, or
I
I'll
get
say
it.
I'm sorry. So I did have a question
Hmm.
because I'm agreeing, um, and I agree if the goal, right, if the goal is to reconcile, I
Hmm.
think that's the key that we need to understand. If the relationship is what's most important and the goal is to reconcile this relationship, then that's a different conversation. I believe that part as well. If the goal is for you to focus on me, that's a whole different conversation. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I love the fact that you mentioned empathy and trust me, I am 100% on board and I talk about empathy all the time. But I think a lot of times we need to, and I'm not talking about you, of course. I think some people in the space need to understand that there's a difference between empathy and sympathy, right? Because a lot of times we confuse sympathy with empathy. Everybody has the capacity for empathy. It is a part of your core makeup. It is within the scope of developing. It is one of the hardest things to develop. Some like to go all the way to the extreme and say, I am, and I am empathy. Wait, what? I am. Wait, well, no, wait. You got to realize what you're saying. Like, that is a very strong statement. Um, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day, right? But we'll say that we are that thing, and not necessarily understanding that saying that you are that thing is not authentic. However, everyone has that in them. Everyone has the empathetic trait in them. They just have to nurture it and find a way to come to the point of understanding, so forth and so on, right? Being moved, right, when it comes down to empathy. I hope she didn't leave us. Being moved when it comes down to empathy. I wanted you to kind of unpack that so that others can understand what does it mean for it to quote unquote be moved empathetically when a person shares how they feel with someone else. You mute it. There you go.
Could you please ask the last part of that question? I had to go to my door. I do
Oh, I'm sorry.
apologize. I'm
You're
so
good. You're good.
sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. What does it mean to be moved empathetically when it comes down to how another person feels?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So with empathy, it's just simply being able to place myself in the shoes of another person, right? I may not know what is exactly what it feels like, but if I'm just listening to you and I'm trying to think about it, like I'm just placing myself in that space, oh, I could see how you, the person, could feel that way. I may not agree with it. I don't have to agree with it to be empathetic to it and to understand that, wow, I could see how you could feel disrespected. That was not my intent. So, I mean, we haven't all learned that. And in the heat of the moment, when I'm angry and upset, I may not be as empathetic as I would like to be. But first of all, I don't take 7 hours, but when I do take my 20 minutes, when I, when I take my 20, 30 minutes, I come back and I can see how my behavior could have offended you. I come back and even if I know that I did not mean to do that. Um, Sometimes it's hard for people to admit, even because again, like no one wants to be accused of something that they did not do. I understand that. But again, this is the reason why we have things called perception. And perception for some people, that's their reality. So again, I respect that. Even if I didn't do it with any malice intent, I respect that it still offended you. Because again, you don't know where the other person's coming from, right? You really don't know. You don't know their traumas, you don't know any of those things. And no, it's not always my place to figure it out. I don't have to have a therapy session with my partner at all. I don't have That's not it. But when we talk about, do you want that? Then it takes a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of self-sacrifice. It takes vulnerability. It takes humbling yourself. It takes, you being full disclosure. And a lot of people don't want to do that because they live a different life. That's a story for another day, but I'm just saying.
Absolutely. I tell you what, you take 20 minutes you want to, you get duct taped to this chair. We're gonna have this conversation. I'm sorry.
I'm quick to
Um,
forgive. I'm quick to forgive and quick to talk about it. I am. I am.
yeah, no, thank you for saying that. And listen, thank you everybody who putting your information in the chat. We're going to get to them, I promise, eventually. But this conversation is heating up and it's getting really good. I think this is the perfect segue into the next question, right? Um, because you talked about like I can put myself in your shoes. I don't have to agree, right? Can you provide insights on the importance of setting boundaries when navigating forgiveness? Y'all know boundaries is my thing. When setting navigating forgiveness within relationships, the when, the how, and when, if at any time, do they change? And I'm sipping my tea.
This is such a loaded question. Please take it. I just finished talking and I need to sip tea and read this and let it sink in. So I'm going to go second if that's okay while I catch my breath over here because I had to run to that door. So,
Okay. So the first part of the question, provide insight for important setting boundaries and navigating forgiveness within the relationship. So we're talking about forgiveness, and we have addressed the aspects of breaching a relationship, right? So once a relationship has been breached, there where we have to sit down, we have to have this conversation about our boundaries, because they're going to be important to help us to move forward and have a more healthier relationship. And so I think for the first part of this question, well, we have to navigate the forgiveness within a relationship, when, or, the relationship, when, how, and the change is us. Um, and this is a loaded question. So I'm sitting here trying to unpack this, navigating forgiveness. And so when we navigate forgiveness with inside of our relationship, with us two doing the work, and we know we've already established a foundation for our relationship. And then that, once what we've established has been breached, then we have to have this discussion. We have to go back and we have to resubmit, in other words, our boundaries. We have to reinforce them and say, listen, we've had this discussion, we've talked about this, and this is how we're going to have to move forward, or we're not going to be able to move forward together. I'm not providing a hard stance, but I'm saying we've already had this discussion. We've already talked about this. And now we have to go back and we have to reestablish it, and we have to go back and, I guess, talk about this information again, because evidently you don't respect the boundaries that we have made for our relationship. And so I think that's one aspect of this question, which is, as Queenie said, a loaded question.
It is very loaded. So, Dwayne, before I start, I'll please, if you have a response, because I don't want to overload this.
Listen, I love Lisa's response. Right, I'm gonna keep it simple, and then I add the details later. When, soon, how, direct, change, whenever. To me, that's my thoughts, right? Because I have a philosophy, and I've been sharing this philosophy for quite some time, and it's going to be a philosophy because it makes the most sense to me, right? My boundary, my yard, my work. That's what boundaries are all about. Boundaries don't keep you out, it protects what's within. So when we look at it from the perspective of that, like, I don't go to my neighbors and tell my neighbors, say, hey, my grass need cutting, come over here and cut it. That doesn't make sense. But we do that a lot of times in the space of relationship, right? I don't go and, tell my neighbors, like, hey, um, and this is, and I'm gonna give two perspectives with this. I don't call my neighbor and say, hey, you know, um, Amazon just dropped the package off on my dumb. I need you to go pick that up, put it in the house, and I'll be there shortly. However, if I have a good relationship with my neighbors, I know I'm not going to be back for a while. I can ask my neighbors to retrieve my package so it's not stolen, and I'll come to them and get it when I come home. Ask. Let me say again, ask them. I tell them. And so, in the space of boundaries, we got to recognize what boundaries are for. Whenever the boundaries are breached, we kind of remind them that, hey, this was a boundary. Did you not see it? Did you forget about it? Right? They crossed the boundary. Okay, cool. I apologize. Let me get back on the other side. Okay, great. Right? And so over the course of time, boundary changes based upon the status of the relationship. Sometimes we kind of superimpose what we have in our head with what reality is actually presented. And so, because reality is a thing, the story that I have in my head, I don't want reality to be reality. I want my story to be reality. And so sometimes we push boundaries, and they need to be reminded. So I hope I said enough, right, to go ahead and open the door for you to talk, and then I'll come back to add more.
There's so much here. Um, I just want to address Ben. I love his commentary. We are in deep waters. I'm trying not to drown, my brother. I'm trying not to drown.
You're good. You're good. You got floaters
so
on. You're good.
so yeah, yeah, yeah. I got my little floaties on. So I agree with both of you and what you shared. When I look at this, I mean, I love your now, your direct and whenever concept. I love that. I know it doesn't always work out that way, but I do. appreciate that approach. I just think that when we talk about boundaries, sometimes I like to, and I've learned this. I've learned this. This is not Queen's philosophy. I've just learned it. Um, I've learned how to look at boundaries in the reverse, meaning the problem that some of us, when we talk about forgiveness and relationships, and some of us, the issue with these boundaries, like, like we're saying, like we go back to the table, communicate, and reset these boundaries, right? Or set them. Maybe you never had any. We'll reset them. I think some of the issues is that we oftentimes have leaky boundaries. And so with a leaky boundary, we get upset and really we upset with ourselves because we were not strong enough to keep the boundary up. And I've been guilty of that in relationships. And I'm looking at the person angry with them because I've allowed them to cross my boundary. But the truth is that my boundary is leaky. They just found a way in. And I allowed that. So I think that when we start talking about even with forgiveness, I tell individuals now when we get into these conversations about forgiveness, forgiveness is one thing, but forgiveness and you still feel with resentment isn't forgiveness. So we got to be honest with ourselves about what we're doing. It sounds good to say, I forgive you. I want to just move on, just want to move forward. I want to just move on. But when you're still in that house resenting that person's actions because you never really got closure, whatever that closure you needed, and you did not speak up for the person, you didn't provide those spaces for that to happen, then that verbal forgiveness ain't no good for anyone. So I go back to the leaky boundaries that I think a lot of us have when it comes to relationship. Again, I know I've had them. So my anger, it shows outward, but truthfully, it's really inward. I'm angry that I wasn't strong enough. I said I was going to do this and he was never going to be able to do this to me again. And I was not going to put up with this. And I'd be doggone if him coming in at 4 o'clock in the morning, I still cooked him breakfast at 8. Who can I really be mad with? All right, I'm done.
No, 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 no. I, thank you for that analogy because I will offer, I would submit to you that you cooking him breakfast at 4 o'clock in the morning, even though I mean when you woke up, whatever time that was, I'm sorry, you cooking him breakfast when you woke up and him coming in at 4 o'clock in the morning is not synonymous. I would say you cooking him breakfast is a testament of your character, not a response to his behavior. And I think too many times, and this is the thing I make reference to. I think too many times what we're doing is we're responding to another person's behavior and forgetting who we are, and that's where we get into error. You don't respond to another person's behavior; you remember who you are, your first relationship, and then you allow that person to show up in the space of relationship. Now I know I got a lot of people say, "Oh no, I can't do that. I can't do that." And that's fine. That's you, right? I don't have anything against that. But again, who you are, the commitment that you made with Christ and yourself, between Christ and yourself. At least I'm gonna put you on mute again because I'm back. I'm echoing. Um, the commitment that you made between Christ and yourself. That's who you show up in the space of relationship with. When we're in relationship and we're just simply responding to behavior, we're forgetting that we're human. And so what I'm doing is I'm mad at the other person for showing up and saying that they have flaws through actions. But at the end of the day, we all are flawed. We're all flawed beings. Until we get to that point of understanding, then we don't necessarily recognize the importance of boundaries. Because boundaries, my boundary, again, is for me. It prevents me from encroaching on you. Why? Because the boundaries that I have for myself, I automatically attribute them to you. So if my boundaries say, hey, you can't come in my house at 4 o'clock in the morning, guess what I don't do in my own house? I don't come in at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's the power of boundaries. So when we have them and we discuss them early, now we understand who we're dealing with. And if we understand that, now moving forward, as the relationship matures, that's the key, not regress, because we don't change boundaries for bad behavior. But as the relationship matures, we adjust the boundaries to reflect the maturity. But I love that analogy that you gave because I agree with you. I'm not cooking breakfast because you came home at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm cooking breakfast because that's who I am. And that's the big difference.
I 100% agree. But when again, if we're talking about boundaries, my boundary is that I should not have opened the door if that's the thing that I've already said that I'm no longer going to allow. So I think that again, again,
I got you. I
you know,
got
I'm a little less, I'm a little less on the submissive and humility side when it comes to people taking advantage of you. Um, because there's a thin line between using good judgment and not allowing people to misuse you and to continue to be prayerful and hopeful. There's a thin line between the two. And so I'm very careful when I hear people and I see people and I get it. But when we're talking about boundaries, what are my boundaries? Because again, you're right. I'm a person that's in service. That's just who I am.
you. Right.
But what was my boundary that I had set for myself? And if I continue to leak, allow them to be leaky, then
Hmm.
who can I be upset with? I cannot be upset with you.
Right.
It's on me what I've chosen. So then I'm in here throwing eggs around and I'm upset and I'm throwing the plate. I never even had to open the door.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
And you
I
still got to
never had to
clean that
open
mess up.
and I still got to clean it up and I'm angry. But I never had to open the door. But I need to also allow myself not to feel guilty about the boundary.
Bingo. I love it. Lisa, you had something. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to add that within the boundary, because this is a place, a space inside this boundary. There should be safety and trustworthiness within this boundary. And once that is breached, once you breach it, and you tell me you don't care about the boundaries that we set, inside of our space or inside of this relationship, and you tell me you don't care about it, I understand what you were saying, Coach, that you should continue to be the same person, even though the person's behavior doesn't show that they respect the boundary. And the analogy that Queenie used, say she did open the door. And she said she's not the person who, she ain't that, she's not there as far as humility.
You eat, you eating Pop Tarts, bruh.
no, no, but she can still make the breakfast. This is just what I was thinking for herself. I'm just saying. I'm not trying to be, but I'm not saying that doesn't change who she is. And
Right.
if there's some left for the person, okay. I mean, I'm just saying there is another way to look at doing this to remain, to don't feel like, because if that happens in the moment and you opening the door for somebody, 4 hours later you're gonna go cook. I'm just using her analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Then you still in your, you still in
Feelings.
your feelings,
Yeah.
But there is a way to remain and continue to be who you are in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna add that.
Mess around and be another Al Green situation up in here. Y'all better be careful. Don't go to sleep, bro. Don't go to sleep. I'm trying to tell you.
And and because I don't want that situation to bring out the worst in me, the best thing for me to do
It's not open the door.
is not open the door, right? And I mean, I'm just being honest. I don't. I'm just being honest. Like that's
No,
the
no.
best thing for me to do until I'm right with myself and can handle it differently. I need to readjust and maybe put some distance and not open the door.
Precisely. And that goes back to, again, the boundary that's established. In the beginning, if we say we ain't coming to nobody's house at this time in the morning, right? And to your point, the leaky boundary, it, it we if we go back on our own boundary that we established, then why would the other person believe in any other boundary that you have as well? So you didn't change this one. Let's see what else I can change. Let's see what else we can get you to adjust. You see what I'm saying? So I agree with that wholeheartedly. But the boundary was we ain't going to nobody's house after 2 o'clock in the morning. You know what I'm saying? I get you probably going out there and living your best life and doing whatever. And 2 o'clock is the cutoff, bro. You know what I'm saying? You coming over here, you can't come past 2 o'clock. Anything after 2 o'clock, you probably been up to no good anyway. So I want to see you. So I get that.
Can
Yes.
I add this example? And I just want
Mhm.
just to state this, and this just goes to boundaries as well. When we said it, like Queenie was saying, and we can't we can't allow other people to breach it, or we can't allow other people to breach it. Like I have my adult daughter who may be watching now. um she was living with me for a time, and I said to her, I was like, listen, after 11 o'clock, because I got to go sleep, I get up in the morning. If wherever you are after 11, I need you to stay there, because the doors is locked and I'm not opening them. And I meant that with every fiber of my being. And you can ask her. I didn't open the door. And then she'll come me, and it happened a couple of times. But once you establish your boundaries, then you teach. I know I know coach doesn't like this, but then you in a way you teach people that this is a boundary that I set for myself, and I'm not going to allow you to breach it in this particular relationship. So just wanted to add.
She cleaned it up. I can't stand when people say you teach people how to treat you. They're not dogs. You don't teach people how to treat you. You teach people what you're accepting in your life. That's it. That's all it is. I just, for me, I'm just saying, I can't stand when people. It really get you teach people how to treat you. Who is you? What makes you so special? Get over yourself. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I hate that. We take phrases and turn them around as though we're on some type of mountaintop. No, I'm sorry. All right, I'm good. Um, moving moving on. It's just one of those things. My pet peeves. Moving on to the next question. And again, listen, we appreciate you guys. All your comments in the chat. I see you. We greatly appreciate you. Michelle Ray talking about the cleanup woman. You need to stop. Cut that mess.
What
um,
is going on?
well, when we said it, when you got a cutoff time, and if you go beyond that cutoff time, you ain't getting in. She said that's when the cleanup woman comes in. So
Well,
I got it. I understand. If that's available, then it's never
hey,
was. It never
call
should have been.
call Keisha. I think that's what King George said. He gonna go to
Mm,
Keisha. So
mm. I don't know.
no hit on Keisha. That's just a
I'm about to
cleanup
say I don't
woman.
know who
That's the,
Keisha
that's the,
is.
that's the, that's a cleanup woman
That's the cleanup
for
woman for the
King
day.
George, the singer. Yeah,
Gotcha.
that's what he said.
I am not familiar. Okay. How can couples ensure that their efforts toward forgiveness are sincere and not just superficial attempts at moving on?
I'll take that one. Um, I go back every time. It starts with yourself. Like you dealing, first of all, there's a lot of people that are superficial. There's a lot of people that are they up to no good. You got to know your person as well as you can and know yourself. So, you talking about a couple. I mean, these are two different individuals. We don't know what's going on in their minds. We don't know what their intentions are. We don't know what their end goal is in this relationship. So first you got to start there. Know who your person is. Sometimes it seems like a waste of time when you're working with a person that's operating on a different level, a level of deceit, a level of not being authentic, a level of just trying to use you for the moment. So you got to first iron that out, shake that out, make sure that's not what you're dealing with, make sure you're not that person. But I think that when people are truly wanting to forgive and they're really honest about that and their heart is right, their heart's in the right space. And I know we're speaking on religiously. If your heart is in the right space and God is leading you as a couple, then you come to the table again wholehearted and honest and open about the forgiveness. And not just that. What is the intended outcome? Like, what are we doing any of this for? I know a lot of people don't want, they talk against having expectations in relationships. Well, I don't speak that because I'm not going to go take any job and not have an expectation. And no employer is going to hire me and not have an expectation. So I'm not going to operate in any relationship without some understanding and expectation of what we're trying to do. And that's the same thing for me with forgiveness and having a conversation. For me, I know me. I don't 100% know that other person. I know me if I'm coming asking for forgiveness or if I'm forgiving. I know me. I don't 100% know the other person. So I have to go in faith that what they're doing in this moment sitting in front of me is real. And then we just work on a plan to move on. I need full disclosure. As the sister said earlier, resetting some boundaries. What does that look like? We're going into an agreement in this relationship. And when you break the agreement, whether it's me or whether it's you, then we have to deal with the repercussions of that and not then try to blame it on an entity that we cannot see or a space or a thing or place it. No, this is our thing. We did this. But that's where I am. I'll pass it over to my sister.
Once a relationship has been breached in some way, there is going to be some lingering resentment, and that's where you have to go and do your self-examination, and you have to unpack. I mean, in the moment, there's a concept that coach teaches in the Diamond Club called OODA loop. In the moment, sometimes we have to have these strategic, difficult conversations immediately, because there's so much that can happen in those moments. And so if we don't in the moment, if it seems like there's not a sincere um, it's not a sincere thought to move forward, then we're going to recognize that the other person, the people in the conversation. And so we don't take our time to do that. And sometimes it may not be in the same space. There may be a time of separation. I mean, just to be realistic. But in those spaces, you can't think about the offense. You really can't, because this is a time where you need to examine yourself. Each individual needs to examine themselves, and then they need to consider how they may have contributed to where we are now, and then how we can not ever go down that road again, and then how we can move forward. So there's a process, and you can't rush it. It takes time, but it is doable. Trust me. You can forgive. God can strengthen your relationships, and you can move forward, and it be an even healthier relationship, because you had the experience. You don't want to do that again, and you want to move forward. Or you can do just the opposite. I'm not going to do this again. I'm not going to move forward. I'm going to be sincere in how I feel about this, and I think we should part ways. So, I mean, those are options that are going to be there because there's a breach. So, forgiveness does not simply mean that I forget or I restore you back to our previous relationship status. No, it means that I forgive you, and I understand that this may not be something that we need to continue to do and walk together. But it does not mean that I'm not forgiving you.
I love it all. I really do. Um, I agree. Forgiveness and access is not the same thing. And I think sometimes we need to understand that we don't necessarily have to give the other person the exact same access that we gave them prior to the offense happening. That's for starters. But then I also ask the question, not openly, just have to ask the question: does forgiveness look different if access looks different? Because if forgiveness did not change its covering, but I changed the level of access, then why do we view forgiveness as being a different entity when access is not the same? See, that's kind of like the space I like to start off with, because we'll say, oh, I can forgive a person without them ever repenting, and you can. But then in the space where access wants to be, we want to continue to give them access, right? But they've never gotten to the point of repenting like the way I wanted them to. They never gave me that, and I'm gonna use this term because y'all know I don't believe in this term. They never gave me the closure. I love you, Queen. I'm sorry. They never gave me the closure that I need. Um, you know, uh, does forgiveness now look different? The, even though they weren't as empathetic as I would like them to have been as it pertains to how I feel, does forgiveness look different? And so I think when we start to unpack the whole concept of forgiveness, forgiveness is on me. It is purely my responsibility. Because let's be honest, in the space where the person didn't even get the access to ask me for forgiveness, did I forgive them? If the answer is yes, because you got to realize I still have to move on. I can't carry that weight with me and start telling everybody, "Oh, I'm blessed and highly favored." Stop lying, right? I'm sorry, y'all know Queenie, you know how I am. I'm sorry. At least you know how I am too. So it's if forgiveness is the same forgiveness that presents itself in my life when this person didn't have the access to ask me for forgiveness, why do I think it looked different in the space where the person is in my face and I'm telling them that I now need closure? I think when it comes down to the authentic nature of our behaviors in the space of forgiveness, I have to go back to the whole point. The point of the matter is it's a facet of my character. It's a facet of who I'm in relationship with, first and foremost. The foundational relationship that matters most to me. Not that you don't matter, but this relationship matters most to me. And oh, yeah, by the way, when we first met, you knew about that. You knew about that relationship. I didn't hide that relationship from you. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't a relationship I kept in secret. This wasn't a side chick, right? This is the most important relationship in my life. This relationship supersedes the relationship I have with my mother. And if anybody knows me, they know I love my mama. I'm just going to keep it real, right? So if you knew about this relationship and you knew because of this relationship, this is how I will always show up in relationship when boundaries are now crossed. It is this relationship that through this relationship, it actually gives me the space on how these boundaries are set and established and reinforced. Okay. So now going back to whether or not another person's, I don't care about whether or not your behavior is sincere. My focus is to ensure that my behavior is sincere, right? Queen, I like the fact that you said just have faith that their behavior is sincere. Well, if we're honest with ourselves, every relationship is based upon faith, but it's not based upon the faith of the story that I have in my head. That story that I have in my head is false. It is based upon faith of the calling that we were called to do. And the relationship is subject to that, only that. So when we go back and understand the purpose of relationship, we must redefine it. It ain't got nothing to do with Snow White and the seven imps, dwarfs. It ain't got nothing to do with life happily ever after. It ain't got nothing to do with no Prince Charming riding in on no white horse and putting you in no big old house with these white picket fence. It's a lie. It's a fairy tale. Get away from that mindset. Get into the mindset of what the purpose of relationship is. And again, it just doesn't apply to you. I'm not talking to you, right? When when a man leaves his mother and his father and unite with his bride, they become one flesh. Okay, so the purpose of relationship must be to serve, and you have to understand what that service is. When we go back and start, I think I heard somebody say something about job description. Careful, careful, careful. I'm just saying, if there's a job description, right, that means that there's a compensation. If there's a job description, there's a compensation, there's a benefits package, there's also a repercussion when there is not the proper behavior displayed on the job, which means you can get fired easily, quickly. And in some states, it can be what they say, no fault. I'm just I'm just saying. So we got to be
In Virginia, it's at will.
at will. That's what it was. I'm sorry. So it's also, I think, South Carolina, Georgia. I think it's pretty much all states have adopted that. So at will. So, and I'm sorry, I said no fault, but at will. So at the leisure of the other person, not necessarily having no rhyme or no reason. And when you go back and research the scripture, because again, like I said, if this doesn't apply to you, right? Go back and research the scripture. The Pharisees asked Christ, is it lawful to, right? And so that's my point. So he said, what did the law of Moses tell you? Right. So we have to understand what we're talking about. I love analogies because we did this just the other night talking about uh, uh, marriage, and I heard somebody compare covenant to a contract. And although I understand the analogy and I understand the comparison, but it's not the same because a contract is a mutual. It is an agreement of mutual distrust, to where a covenant is a mutual agreement of trust. It's two different things. It's not the same. They're close, but they're not the same. And I also believe that when it comes down to relationships and jobs, there's similarities, but they're not the same, because at the end of the day, I have an expectation to receive based upon the hours that I put. I have a contract betwixt me and you that says if I work 40 hours, I get this amount of monies. But not near one of y'all listening right now have worked those hours and got that money. I know it for a fact because taxes had to happen. So you're not even getting what you agreed to. So that's why I say we got to be careful when we start making analogies. I love the analogy because it puts us in the proper mindset, but it's a difference when it comes down to relationship, because every aspect of a relationship is based upon faith. And in this economy, in this world, in this society, the only relationship that we apply these type of expectations to are intimate relationships. We got relationship with friends that we don't expect nothing from. So that's what I'm saying. We gotta we have to come to an understanding. If it comes down to forgiveness and the authentic nature of a person's behavior, the only person's behavior that I need to be concerned with as being sincere is this guy. And if I know my actions are sincere, and if I know wholeheartedly within the depths of my being that everything that I'm working towards is for the greater good, not for my good, then it doesn't really matter to me what you think. You can believe in your heart that, oh, well, this you fake and what, that's fine. And guess what? I'm okay with it. And I'm going to still smile and we'll sleep good at night because I know in my heart that I'm doing what I'm doing from the depths of my being to serve the person who I'm in the best and most fullest relationship that I ever encounter. And I think once we grab that posture, right? I'm sorry, Queenie. Once we grab that posture, then we'll realize that we'll stop blaming somebody else. You're not doing this. I need you, because every time I put that word need on you, it's impossible for you to succeed because you'll never live up to my expectations.
Thank you. I appreciate that, sir. It's your show. All due respect, and I'm here for it. But you did say something, and again, I'm more in the middle of the road. I'm not. So just a little background. I was a pastor's wife, just so y'all know. Um, this ain't no girl that don't know the word.
I'm looking for my church fan. Keep going.
I know. I just now have a different perspective. So I respect the teachings of the word. I just have a different perspective. No disrespect. I respect yours. Please respect mine. And this is not to you, Dwayne. This is to the world. Because I know sometimes when I come on a different side and I'm like, yeah, but, right? I have a challenge. When you use the word and you say that husband leave his family, we become one. What's the purpose of becoming one if we continue to separate and now we place the responsibility of emotions and feelings on something else? I am here to serve my spouse. My spouse to me is here to serve me. This is our thing. We are interdependent. But whenever we start separating a person's emotions and a person's feelings and a person's experience, how do we really reconcile that within ourselves if we are taking the word literally as it's written? Um, Hence why I can't do that, right? I know that my husband has a certain expectation for me. Hence why he chose to marry me. I'm not married, y'all, but I am saying I know that he has that on me. And I would never tell him he should not. There's a reason why he chose to marry me and not the girl across the street. So when we start talking about this, we become one, but then we separate when we start talking about an offense to the person that we are in covenant with, or in contract, or in relationship with. I can't separate the two because what I've done to you, I've done to myself. So I cannot tell you I don't feel what you're feeling. I can't tell you that, oh, that has nothing to do with me. I take no responsibility. We're going to put that on God. I'm not doing that. I cannot do that. God has equipped me to be able to stand here and to be in relationship with you and understand that. And that's just how I see it.
No, no, no.
That's how I see it. And I take it upon myself when it comes to accountability.
I don't
to
think
each
we're
other.
saying. I don't think we're saying anything different
No,
though.
I don't. I'm not saying why,
Yeah.
but I'm just between our conversation and reading some of the comments and some. I just want to make sure that I'm driving that point home.
Correct.
The reason why I say the things I say the way I say them, right, personally, is because I cannot separate. Um, I am connected to my partner, and what I do impacts my partner. I owe them. Now, this is me in a relationship.
Hmm.
I do owe something to them. That could have a relation with anyone else, or be by yourself.
Right.
But I cannot exempt myself from the responsibility that I have in this relationship with you. From forgiveness to reconciliation. And this is also why I said without if there's no absence of resentment, to me, there's no true forgiveness. This is why I mentioned the eggs. I'm angry, right? I'm angry. I'm resentful. And I'm throwing eggs at you. Did I really forgive you, right? So I still work on this. This is not something I'm not, this is something I work on daily, is to make
Hmm.
sure that when I forgive my son or my partner, that I'm not somewhere still brewing some resentment for what they did to me.
There you go.
Because that's going to make me show up poorly. I forgave you, but now I'm mistreating you. I'm poking at you. I'm avoiding you. I ain't talking to you. But I call myself forgiving you, and we talk access, and we still have access to each other. I'm more of an in your face person. Listen, I forgive you. I'm gonna tell you this. I'm just not messing with you anymore. We good. Because you've taught me our relationship. You've taught me how far it goes.
Right.
So right now at this time and space where I am, I'm gonna forgive you and let this go. And I'm gonna go over here and just work on myself.
Gonna get that Monique style on that. I love it. I love
Oh my God! Do not do that.
I'm sorry. And the reason why I said I don't see what you're saying as being different, even though, um, well, the reason why I say I don't see what you're saying as being different because I think what you said is an extension of, right? I don't see it as being separate. I think once we come into the proper alignment and understanding what relationship looks like, then this is what we do because we understand the things that we're doing for and against our spouse is actually affecting me. So that's why I say that. I can't take how I'm feeling and slap it on my spouse and make you responsible to do, or I can't say, hey, you know what? That's you. You go over there and do that. I don't care nothing about that. I'm over here doing my own thing. Let me know when you finish. We'll come back together and high five and move on. And we can get them eggs. In fact, I'm going to bring the eggs home so you can cook them so you don't throw them at me no more. Lisa Keys, me and Queen of them are going back and forth a little bit. But I want to kind of get off the gas for a second and kind of open the door and let you come in because I apologize. I feel like we've been stealing thunder from you.
No, I was listening, and I don't disagree with anything you guys were saying. And one thing I did want to make mention of when you mentioned contract and covenant, a contract, because I work in contracts all the time. A contract, you're looking for an exit clause. Each party is looking for their exit clause. So in a contract, if you're looking for, if the other individual breaches the contract, how can I get out of it? Then I don't think that's the same, like you were saying, Coach, that it would be a well, I'm sorry, it would be a the covenant is different. The covenant is different. We're looking for a reason to align and to come together and to stay together and to be together. And we've made our position and our and understanding in this covenant clear. And the example that we can use, the covenant that God made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Mm.
No, there were
All
conditions
right.
to the covenant. So the covenant said, if you do this, this is what I'm going to do. That's us being in relationship together.
So what
And
I'm
so,
hearing you say, hold on, before you go too far, what I'm hearing you say is that there's no such thing as unconditional love.
no, there's conditions. There's condition to, yes. There's no such thing as unconditional love. There's
Okay,
agape
very well.
love. There's agape love.
Mm.
Okay.
Which comes with conditions.
Yeah, which comes with conditions. It is, but it doesn't say that I don't love you. It's saying that we are establishing our relationship. This is our relationship. This is a relationship you said that you would enter into knowing the conditions of it. And so, yes, so there is the covenant is different, and there's a vast difference between the covenant and the contract because of what I stated earlier. I had a situation where I had to work with my agent, and we had to find out, does our client have an exit clause? Both parties are looking for that in the event of a breach, and so that's the difference. And I just wanted to add that.
No, I'm glad you add that. And that's why I stated previously a contract is a mutual agreement of distrust, right? This is what's going to happen if you show I can't trust you. But a covenant is a mutual agreement of trust. And if we're completely honest, God can't trust you. So he didn't make the covenant with you, he made the covenant with his son. And you were just a beneficiary of the covenant. But that's a whole nother conversation. Can I get additional 5 minutes? Would you guys giving me mind giving Queenie? You could, okay. I just want to make sure. This conversation. Listen, you guys are awesome, by the way. Thank you, both of you. Amazing. I want to kind of jump into one more question, but it's on the culture of forgiveness, because I think this is something that we need to collectively, as a community, and I'm not necessarily just talking specifically about Black folk, but I'm also talking to Black folk. A culture of forgiveness is important. So, in your opinion, what does a culture of forgiveness mean?
Sorry, working with these two mouses. Um, a culture of forgiveness. What does it mean? I have an example that I can use. I can. Yeah. When you think about the story of Joseph and his brothers, okay, when you think about that story where they sold him into slavery, and then later on they had to come back to him, and everything that he went through in that process, and then once they came and they didn't recognize who he was, I think the Bible says he tested them, and then his intent was always to help provide for them because they came from because there was a famine in the land and they needed food, and so his intent was always to provide for them, and he did that, and so I think that in that particular instance, that culture of forgiveness was there was an offense. I've been through some things and I understand the experiences that I've had in my life, but the relationship with God is gonna is prompting me, and because it's a part of me, and because I know His character, is is saying to me that I have to forgive, and I'm here for my brother and sister. How can I say I have a relationship with the Father, and I don't have a relationship with people I see every day? So I think that's one example of having a culture of forgiveness. Is understanding. For me, I'm a believer, and I believe every word of the gospel. I do, and I use it, and I filter every situation in my life through it because there's not a situation in my life that I cannot find in the Word of God that can help me identify behaviors or identify mostly my behavior, and so I think the culture of forgiveness in this particular aspect is that he made sure that he provided for them no matter what happened before in the past. And that's because he was in a position of authority. And that's why we have to be careful how we treat people because, and our family members, because we never know, no matter what, no matter what, we have to always make sure that we should treat people good. That should be our first instinct. We should default to treating others good. And so for me, that was an example, and is actually one of the things that I wrote down when I was answering this question. I think in that particular instant, he showed that there's a culture of forgiveness. And I just wanted to add this one thing. I believe God is so strategic in what He does, and when we're in relationship with Him, He shows Himself to us. He shows us what his intent is for our life. And we just have to stay close to him and listen to what he's saying. And then he helps us navigate these things that come up in our life. So I just wanted to add that.
I always feel like I'm in church when I'm here. I love it. I love
You know,
it. It just
just can't with you.
I just feel like I'm right in like North Carolina. I love it. I do. I mean, I love the fact that, like Lisa's given, you know, from a godly perspective. I love that, right? Because that's a foundation that many of us need and many of us really are standing on. So I was being honest about that. And I do feel like I'm in church. I always want to, pass the collection plate. Um, I think that also, not from a religious standpoint, but a perspective, I think that we need to see the value in forgiveness, right? To create the culture, we got to see the value. We got to learn from, the things that we've seen or done or our past mistakes. We got to be comfortable expressing that, talking about it, being able to share that. But I think that when you normalize the fact that we all need forgiveness, then I believe that hopefully many of us can take from that and offer forgiveness. And not just only that, forgiveness is healing because when you hold on to unforgiveness, you can't tell me you're not filled with bitterness. And bitterness is sickly to the body, you know. And so I think like, just understanding the health benefits from forgiving, creating that culture in your home, parents forgiving your children so that your children will grow up and learn to forgive their spouses. Being able to display that. Let me model this behavior. Let me show you what it looks like. So I think that that's the way that we influence that culture is by modeling the behavior ourselves. Some people are just not going to get it. They're just not. But you can't save them all. You just can't. So you got to be willing to influence starting here first and then model it out so others can see it. But there's no reason for me to talk about forgiveness if I'm at odds with my kids. How who am I? I'm hypocritical. I can't preach about forgiveness and I'm over here. I don't want to speak to my neighbor because their grass look better than mine. So when you model that and practice it, because I'm big on practice. We learn something, honey, you better practice it. It sound good in theory. Go to church and hear TD Jakes or whoever it is preach, and you like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go home and do it. If you don't practice it until you test it, you don't know how you're gonna act. So when you are tested and you recognize it, model it. And be honest, like I'm not all the way there, but I'm trying. So those are my, I don't know if I gave one, two, three, four, 5 points because I'm not, it's in front of me, but I went off the dome. But those are the things I think about when we talk about the culture. Um, that modeled behavior is important. My children, they don't always get it right, right? But I've tried to display in front of them how to have a healthy argument with somebody. And if I get elevated, also I try to show them how I can come back and say, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Still working on this. This is a part of me I am still working on. So that's how I create the culture. My kids can come and say, "Well, I mean, you talk about forgiveness and I did wrong and you still holding my feet to the fire." That's going to make me check myself cuz I am preaching one thing and I'm showing up one way in this house. I got to create that culture here in this space first. I'm off my soapbox, y'all. Thank you.
No, thank you. Don't y'all feel like whenever Queenie talk and get that passionate, you feel like you just got chastised by your grandma? I'm just saying. Um, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking.
It's
Um,
all love, I
it's
promise.
all love. Exactly. Your grandma love you. That's my point. Your grandma trying to correct you with love. I need you to get it right, baby. So, um, I love it. I love both perspectives. I love all the analogies given because you guys are right. And the sad part about it, Queen, I know you be saying you separate. It's not separate. I promise you, it's not. If you listened, not you, but I'm saying if anybody listened to what they said, it was one and the same. There is no separation, and we don't talk religion. We talk Bible. It's two different things. So, so I want to. I'm gonna start off, and these are our final thoughts. By the way, we're not going to do any more final thoughts after this. Um, I in the army, for those of us who was in the army, I did the army for 24 years. One of the things that they were real big on is understanding the difference between culture and climate, and the way that you understood that the army culture was taking shape within your organization is by doing what they call a command climate survey. So you test the temperature of the organization to ensure that it lined up with the culture. I like the fact that you mentioned practice because I think we, a lot of times, in the midst of either addressing a thing or hearing a thing, we hear perfection, right? We are constantly in a space of practicing. We talk about keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. Baby, that's practice. That's not perfection, right? So even in a person's ability to fail, it only shows the necessity for Christ. So you can practice a thing and fail at it and get up and keep doing it, keep practicing, right? Keep practicing what Christ modeled, right? Because that's what we're talking about when it comes down to a culture of forgiveness. And there is no other culture that modeled forgiveness better than the one that Christ modeled for us on the cross. We're all, and Queen, I like the fact you said that, we're all in the space of needing forgiveness, period. And until we get that, then we'll stop holding people's quote unquote feet to the fire for not being perfect. No one is perfect, not even you, right? You may act perfect in a particular sense, but you're not perfect. Even in the midst of addressing somebody else's transgression, I promise you, if you have the conversation further on in advance, you was a part of that. You was a part of that transgression. You probably set the conditions for that person to behave a particular type of way, and now they're behaving that way, and you're mad that they're behaving that way. Go back and research and have the dialogue, have the conversation. The conversation to such a degree that is healthy to where both of you can walk away from the conversation feeling empowered with understanding. That's the key. Modeling, as Queen has said, modeling that culture of forgiveness is infectious. It is a learned behavior passed along from generation to generation to generation. And coming from a group that have been marginalized by people who could care less about you, have shown that you were less than them, that want you to believe that you're less intelligent, right? It's still Black History Month. Y'all leave me alone, right? Coming from a group of people who have literally been placed, cast aside, whatever the case may be, we still have to model forgiveness. I cannot hold, the brother that I work with accountable for what his ancestors did. That's wrong. You see what I'm saying? We have to understand what that looks like. I can't be talking about forgiveness within my home or on this platform if I'm at work holding people accountable for something I never experienced. The concept of a culture of forgiveness need to exist not just in this house, it need to exist in this neighborhood, it need to exist in this county, the city, this county, the state, and last but not least, this country, because this country, whether you believe it or not, is broken. Listen, sorry to kind of get a little deep just now, but I'm just telling you the truth, man. We need to stop fighting one another. Had to clean it up before I start crying. Listen, we love you guys. We love you guys. Make sure that you tune in, join us, www.totalmindsetshift.com. Find the group, ask for admits. We just don't let anybody on, right? We let you on. Once you get on, you're a part of the community, you're a part of the family, you're a part of a culture of forgiveness. Listen, we love you guys. We appreciate you guys. We will see you guys next. Wait, hold on. I went too fast. Lisa Keys, you got an announcement to make, don't you?
Yes, yes, yes. We are podcast for renewed consideration. We're going to be talking about banking, and me and Adrian Maltower and Kim Thomas, and the process to home ownership. So we have a premiere on YouTube at 3 o'clock today. We'll be there, and we're going to answer any questions for anyone who has any questions pertaining to um, home ownership or banking. This Miss Adrian Waltower, she came in and she helped us with so much information. And I think the information on the podcast, you just watch it. You're gonna enjoy
Absolutely. I'll be there. I'm there. Just count me in.
it. The link is
Look,
in your. I think it's in your. It's on your group.
it's,
Empower Perspective. Hmm.
it's on the group page. I will make sure I post it on the community.
Hmm.
And yeah, so we're gonna make sure we get the word out. Listen,
And
if you're
Miss
available,
I just wanted to, Miss Queenie, it's such an honor to be here with you on the panel. I really enjoyed you, and I just wanted to say that. Thank
That
you,
is
Coach.
so sweet, Miss Keys. Likewise, I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure. I look
Yeah,
forward to it again.
yeah.
speaking of which, the next time we come back, we're talking about submission, y'all. Yay! All right, listen. Hey, y'all
Am I
know,
invited to that
of
conversation?
course you are. Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, you guys are too awesome for me. Listen, you guys have a great rest of your day. Have an awesome rest of your weekend. And remember, let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else. And we'll see you next time.